for Matt Elliott. He's one of our other crew bosses, and I'd only had the crew for a couple of days, or for a day actually. It was the first day on the assignment with that crew. And we had an individual that, you know, I'm up the line, they're digging line, removing brush, and he got stung by a bee. And we had no idea at that time that he was allergic. Well, he'd had his EpiPens on him, and he'd lost one somewhere while we were gritting through the green. So he's an EpiPen down. And so my crew calls me down, we have a situation, I come down to assess the situation, and he's having trouble breathing already. So, you know, get a hold of my overhead to start the process, and they've got the ball running where there's people coming towards us, and we realized at that point that it was pretty serious. You know, his breathing went out, he was coming in and out of consciousness. He administered his second EpiPen, self-administered, and it had no effect. It only administered like a quarter of the dose, so it misfired. So he was going into full anaphylactic, and basically the only place for me to evac was about a quarter mile up the hill. So we had to gather the crew, and we carried him out. And the terrain wasn't too bad. It was a fairly gradual slope, and we just cycled people in and out of carrying him. And they were going to bring an ambulance in, but the ambulance was like an hour out, and the helicopter wasn't available. I can't remember exactly why, but Air Attack just happened to be flying over. They were doing just a recon, and they were just right over. So it just happened that everything lined up, and they were able to land in a crossing in the road. And so my task force leader was a paramedic on some of his off time, and he had his paramedic stuff there with him. So he was able to give oxygen, administer oxygen, and basically everything just came together, and we were able to get that individual out to the helicopter and do an evac. Well, the whole time you're communicating, you know, with command over the radio so that they can stay up to date on what's going on, you know, and it was that just being able to stay focused on the situation at hand. At first, in my mind, I panicked, but in my actions, it all came together because of my training. It just all worked the way I was taught that it should, because I'd never really been in that situation where I'd have to apply those kind of things. And thankfully, I'd gone over it in my head enough times that when it actually happened, it was like clockwork. It really just worked for me. And the crew and everybody and the overhead from the Forest Service, it came together, and our system worked, and we were able to get him out to safety. You know, as a leader, you're responsible for this individual, and there's nowhere to pass the buck in that situation. You're it. Everybody's looking to you to what to do, and you have to make a decision. You have to act. And I was just happy that once it just all worked for me. I didn't get stuck in the moment once I realized I had to do something.
Thank you.